Let's unpack this scene a little bit here. This is Act 1, Scene 4. And again, we're back at Forres, the camp after the battle. And Duncan asks his son Malcolm, have you killed the thane of Cawdor, the rebel thane who's caused this civil war? And Malcolm says something very interesting about Cawdor. He says that Cawdor, very frankly, he confessed his treasons, implored your highness's pardon, and set forth a deep repentance. Nothing in his life became him like the leaving it. He died as one that had been studied in his death to throw away the dearest thing he owed as twere a careless trifle. What that reveals about the character of Cawdor, the deceased man, is that on the one hand, he's deeply repentant about having caused civil war. He seems to have caused civil war out of necessity or out of some sort of force was driving him, but he's very sorry for it afterwards, and he repents him of having done what he has done to break up the kingdom. But further than that is that he dies courageously, bravely. Cawdor is a brave man. Even though he's a rebel, he's a brave man, and he dies as though is nothing at all when he dies. And Duncan says, there's no art to find the mind's construction in the face. He was a gentleman on whom I build an absolute trust. There's no way to tell a bad man by looking at his face. You can't judge a book by its cover. And Duncan is suggesting that this deception that Cawdor has placed upon him seems to have come out of nowhere. He didn't expect it because Cawdor was so good at being able to deceive Duncan. Well, who's going to deceive him next? It's Macbeth. Duncan falls twice for the same trick, so to speak. And in this scene, Macbeth then comes into the palace and he hears all these great praises, right, that Duncan heaps on him. And Duncan leads him to believe that he's going to be given something very, very fine as an award. He says, only I have left to say more as thy due than more than all can pay. You've done such a great job as a soldier, I can't repay you. So what's going through Macbeth's mind, but I'm going to get this really high position. And he stumbles a little bit. It's almost like he goes into his court backup voice in a way, and mouths all these platitudes. Your Highness's part is to receive our duties, ours to your throne, blah, blah, blah. And Duncan says, I'm going to make you noble, and I'm going to make Banquo noble, make you nobility. But then he says this, he says, I'm going to establish my estate upon, and notice the text, there's an end line there. The line ends and there's almost like a cliffhanger. Who's he going to establish it upon? Macbeth? No. Our eldest son, Malcolm, whom we name here after the Prince of Cumberland. So Macbeth doesn't get the award he thought was coming to him. Even if it was an irrational thought, Macbeth thought he was going to get the award of Prince of Cumberland. He was going to be made the heir to the throne. Naturally, he should be. Malcolm has not participated as well in the battle. Macbeth has been the main reason why the rebels were put down. Macbeth is the man who's done most of the fighting. Macbeth deserves that title. He is honorable, noble, good, virtuous. He should be king of Scotland. Instead, Duncan creates a dynasty. He establishes the throne upon his son, even though his son hasn't done much. And the injustice of that, I think, sticks in the craw of Macbeth. Macbeth immediately goes back into his court voice. The rest is labor. I'll be myself the harbinger, or so on and so forth. I'm going to go ahead of you and tell the castle that you're coming. And he puts on smiles, and he bows, and he scrapes, and he begins to leave. And then we get the aside, which is sort of like, if you can imagine modern cinema, the camera focuses solely on Macbeth, and everybody else drops into the background. So in the foreground, Macbeth says, I will fall down on this step of the Prince of Cumberland, or I have to overleap that step, one or the other. And he says then, stars hide your fires, let not light see my black and deep desires, which brings up another theme in the text. Dark and light imagery throughout the text come up over and over again, and we see the extinguishing of lights, the extinguishing of the natural lights of stars and sun and moon. And this is because Macbeth now conceives for the first time, I've got to kill the king, and I probably have to kill Malcolm too, if I'm going to be king myself, and I should be king, I deserve to be king. If I'm going to be king, I've got to kill a few people. I've got to break some eggs to make an omelet. And that's so horrible an idea that he has to have the natural world snuffed out so it doesn't see what he's actually going to do. And then again, as a director, we cut back from the foreground to Duncan. And Duncan, who's making jokes, right? Banquo, Macbeth is a banquet to me. Ha, 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 ha. Everybody laughs because he's the king, of course. And he says at the very last, let's go after him. Let's follow him. He's a peerless kinsman. He is a noble, virtuous, honorable knight. Let's go follow him. And so Duncan falls for the same trick twice. And he follows Macbeth into his lair, his castle in Inverness. And we go then to the next scene, and we'll read the text together. This scene now is in Inverness, and we get the introduction of Lady Macbeth reading the letter from her lord. And the character of Lady Macbeth is quite a vibrant character. And we see her struggling with Macbeth, because Macbeth really doesn't want to kill the king, but Lady Macbeth ends up having to convince him to do so. Let's read the text together.